If you have been watching the past several episodes of History Traveler, well, you know that we have been in South Carolina talking about the war and the fighting that took place in the backcountry during the American Revolution. Well, in March of 1781, there was a battle at a place called Guilford Courthouse. And after that battle, which resulted in a British success under General Cornwallis, well, the British were rather bloodied and had to kind of withdraw down to the coast around Wilmington, North Carolina to kind of rest and refit. Well, in April of 1781, Cornwallis decided that he wanted to take his campaign up into Virginia and try and put an end to this thing. And rather than following Cornwallis up into Virginia, well, the Continental General Nathanael Greene decided that he was going to come down into South Carolina and try and finish things off down here in this area. And what would result was going to be the last major battle in South Carolina at a place near where I'm at right now, at Eutaw Springs. So when Cornwallis makes his move up into Virginia, he's going to leave behind a small contingent of British forces in South Carolina to try and hold the posts that are ultimately trying to defend the city of Charleston. One of those elements is going to be led by a guy named Alexander Stewart. He's a lieutenant colonel. He's leading a mixed group of British regulars and loyalists from this area. And that is who Nathanael Greene is going to be going after as they are encamped over at Eutaw Springs. So right here in this area, along these roads, you're going to have this group of Continentals and militiamen from South Carolina and North Carolina who are going to be bearing down on Alexander Stewart. For just a moment, I want you to imagine that it's September of 1781 and you are a member of Nathanael Greene's element that is moving in this direction to the east towards the British camp at Eutaw Springs. So it's going to be hot this time of year, and with this group that is marching in this direction, well, there's going to be a small corps of Continental troops. There's going to be the Maryland Regiment, Delaware Regiment. There's going to be guys from Virginia. They had experience at Camden and Guilford Courthouse and at Cowpens. Also marching along with them are going to be some militia guys from North Carolina and South Carolina. They'd fought at Kings Mountain, Cowpens, very experienced. Sometimes the militia got a bad rap, but by this point in the war, a lot of them were just pretty darn good. And with the Americans, there's kind of going to be a little bit of an all-star team. There's going to be Pickens, there's going to be Light Horse Harry Lee, there's going to be Moultrie, William Washington, who is related to George Washington, and the Swamp Fox himself, Francis Marion. So as these guys are making their way in this direction, well, they're closing in on Stewart's position, but what they don't know is they are about to have an accidental clash with some men who were outside of the camp. I've moved just a little bit to the east, following the general path of Nathanael Greene and his men as they are bearing down on Alexander Stewart's camp at Eutaw Springs. And in this area during the Revolution, one thing you have to keep in mind is that whether it was the Patriots or whether it was the British, both sides are having to kind of live off of the land. So even the men of the British Empire would have to send out these foraging parties. Well, in September of 1881, this is sweet potato season, and there was a group of about 300 British and Loyalist soldiers who had been sent out on a foraging expedition to try and find food. And these guys right around here in this general area are going to run right into Nathanael Greene and his men. So on the morning of September the 8th, there was a foraging party, sometimes called a rooting party, of British soldiers who set out from the Eutaw Springs camp, which is off in this direction. And they were making their way to the west here, basically looking for sweet potatoes. And with them was a group of cavalrymen under the leadership of a guy named John Coffin, which is kind of a cool name. Stuart had heard rumors that there were some Continentals and some Patriot militia in the area and wanted to send along the cavalry to basically provide security. So you have these foragers or these rooters who are scattered out all around here. And again, right here in this general vicinity, in this general area, well, the cavalry under John Coffin is going to clash with the advanced elements of Greene's Continentals and militia. So there's going to be a short skirmish. The gunfire is going to draw the foragers out of the woods, and they are going to get, for the most part, captured. So right off the bat, before the main battle has even begun, well, you have about 300 of the British who have been prematurely removed from the battlefield. There were some who got away, and they're going to make their way back in this direction to the east to the camp at Eutaw Springs to alert Stuart what is going on. He is going to start getting his men deployed. And just to the east of here, well, Greene is also going to get his men deployed. All right. We're going to hop back in the car and move on down the road here. We have now moved east to the part of the Eutaw Springs battlefield that has been preserved. This right here is where the British encampment would have been. So about a mile to the west of us, again, this is all on September 8th of 1781, about a mile to the west of us, Greene is going to deploy all of his men. So in the first line, you're going to have the North and South Carolina militia. So Swamp Fox, Francis Marion is going to be in this group. Behind them, he's going to have the North Carolina regulars, and then behind them, he's going to have regulars from Delaware and Maryland and Virginia. So instead of like a defense in depth, you can kind of think of this as like an offense in depth. And just to the west of the camp, well, they're going to clash with the British and loyalists of Stuart. And the militia, they hold out as long as they can until they run out of ammo, and then they fall back. And then the North Carolina militia goes up, and then they falter. And what's happening through all of this is the British keep extending themselves out. And it's, for the Patriots, it's almost kind of like a Muhammad Ali rope-a-dope. And once the British and the Loyalists have fully extended themselves, well, then the regulars from the Continental Army crash into them and push them right back here to the camp. All right, I'm going to take a quick walk down to the site that used to be the creek that ran by here, but is now a lake. And as I'm walking up here, holy smokes, like I have just walked up on some kind of pelican convention or something. There are just loads of these gathered up here on the lake. Which, for a guy from the Midwest, something a little bit different. We don't see a whole lot of pelicans in my part of the country, but man, there are certainly a bunch of them here. We have to use our imaginations a little bit when we are visiting the Eutaw Springs battlefield, because the ground looks quite a bit different than it did in September of 1781. But just for a moment, I want you to imagine that out here ahead of us we have a whole bunch of tents in the British encampment, and the British have just been driven back from the fighting that has been taking place over here just to the west of the camp. Now, one thing that I don't think I've mentioned yet is that assisting me today has been the Liberty Trail app, which is something that is a product of a partnership between the South Carolina Battlefield Preservation Trust and the American Battlefield Trust. And here at the site, well, they have some interpretive signage to help us out here. So if we look at this map, well, here we can see the first part of the battle taking place to the west of the camp, where the Continentals and the American militia are moving in this direction, are clashing with British forces. And then right here we have the British encampment, where the second part of the battle is going to take place. And that's right here ahead of us. Now, also in this area was a brick house, and the British, some of them are going to basically barricade themselves inside of this brick house. So there's a lot of hand-to-hand combat that is happening out here. Greene would later say that of all of the engagements that he participated in, this one at Eutaw Springs for him was the worst and among the bloodiest. So if we go over to this sign over here, well, this talks about the brick house that was on this site. So this is going to create a little bit of a problem. It becomes a little bit of a fortification for the British, and at one point you have the British on the inside that are barricading the door, and you have these Patriots on the outside that are pushing against it. So it is just absolute chaos through here. And there's a myth that kind of took root after the war, or maybe after the battle, I should say, that one thing that held up the Patriots as they were moving through here is they started looting the camp, and they got into the rum rations of the British, and that's what stalled out the attack. Well, Dan Davis from the American Battlefield Trust, I saw a video with him. He makes the point that there wouldn't have been rum rations in the camp itself. That would have been behind the lines, and they wouldn't have it out in the morning. Really, what probably stalled out the Patriot advance is they have to form lines of battle, and moving that through a camp is going to be rather difficult. Here at this site, they have a few old markers in addition to the interpretive signage that we've already looked at. This one right here says, "This stone marks the field whereon was fought the Battle of Eutaw, September 8, 1781, between a force of the United States under Major General Nathanael Greene and a force of Great Britain under Colonel Stewart. Neither side was victorious, but the fight was beneficial to the American cause." Now, we may circle back to that in just a moment, but another old sign that they have here on the site is to a guy by the name of John Majory Banks. I don't know for sure if I'm pronouncing that last name correctly, but I'm just kind of saying it as I'm reading it. Majory Banks was in command of cavalry on the right flank of the British line. And as the British line was faltering, well, Majory Banks is in this thicket and was able to hold Washington, not George Washington, but William Washington is going to try and make a charge on there. It is going to be unsuccessful. And then Majory Banks is going to fall back to the area of the brick house. He is going to be wounded in the midst of the fighting here, and was later taken to a place about 20 miles from here, and that is where he dies. Now, he was originally buried at that site, but later was relocated to this spot. So again, his flank is the only one that kind of holds out during that attack. But anyway, he was later moved here, and as we can see, got British flag with a little American flag right next to it. But this is the final resting place of John Marjorie Banks. One of the reasons that I like to get out and travel and visit these battlefields is because it gives me an opportunity to learn new things. And right now I'm up against something that I don't know. So here we have the grave of, man, the words are really hard for me to read, but I think it says Paul Stronky or something like that. I'm assuming that this is one of the Patriots who died here at Eutaw Springs, but I'm not 100% positive. So I didn't come across this in my research prior to visiting the battlefield, and there's no interpretive signage here. So maybe somebody watching will know what's going on and can help sort me out, or it's something that I can look up later. But again, yeah, coming to these places gives you an opportunity to learn. Now, when we get to the end of this battle, you have to ask the question, who won? Both sides claimed victory in this battle, and for both sides, the losses were devastating. The British under Stuart are going to start off with about 1,300 men. They're going to have about 700 casualties. The Patriots, they're going to start off with about 2,000, and they're going to lose about 500. So this was a very, very bloody battle for both sides. At the end of the day, Stuart and the British and Loyalists hold the field. So they were able to defend this position even though they were vastly outnumbered. But they do have to fall back to Charleston. So maybe that's a win for the Patriots. Unfortunately, this battle is probably overshadowed by the Battle of Yorktown that takes place not too long after. But the Battle of Eutaw Springs is definitely one that's worth studying, because this was going to be the final battle in the backcountry war of the American Revolution.